The morning alarm echoed through the empty corridors of Station Kepler 4 for to be like a lonely ghost. Vexstar rolled from his sleeping pod and stretched his crystalline limbs. The sound of his joints clicking filled the silence. He had been alone on this mining station for 3 years now, and the solitude suited him perfectly. Vexstar belonged to the Helix species. His people were logical creatures made of living crystal. They valued efficiency above all else. Proud emotions were wasteful. Friendship was unnecessary. Work was everything. He walked to the main control room and checked the atmospheric processors. The machines hummed steadily, converting the planet's toxic gases into breathable air for future colonists. Everything ran smoothly, just as it should. The planet outside was a harsh world of methane storms and frozen rocks. Nothing lived here except the machines and himself. Vexstar preferred it that way. No complications, no distractions. Just work. Prepared his daily inspection route. Today he would check the processors in the northern sector. The area had been showing minor irregularities in the readings. Probably just dust in the sensors. But Vexstar never ignored details. The inspection crawler moved slowly across the rocky terrain. Vexstar watched the landscape through the vehicle's windows. The same gray rocks, the same empty sky, the same perfect emptiness he had grown to appreciate. Then he saw something that shouldn't be there. A dark shape lay twisted in a deep ravine, about half a mile from his route. Vexstar stopped the crawler and activated the long-range scanner.
The readings
confused him. Metal, composite materials, technology that didn't belong to his people. He drove closer to investigate. As the crawler descended into the ravine, the shape became clearer. It was a spacecraft. Small, badly damaged. Smoke still rose from its cracked hull. Vexstar parked the crawler and stepped outside. His environmental suit protected him from the toxic atmosphere. He approached the wreckage carefully. The design was unfamiliar. The hull bore markings in a script he didn't recognize. A movement inside the craft caught his attention. Something was alive in there. Vexstar found an opening in the damaged hull and peered inside. The interior was a mess of broken equipment and twisted metal. In the pilot's seat sat a creature unlike anything he had ever seen. It was small and soft-looking. Skin was pale and covered with strange hair. Red liquid dripped from several wounds on its body. The creature's eyes were closed, but its chest moved slowly up and down. It was breathing. Vexstar recognized the species from the galactic databases. This was a human. One of those emotional creatures from the outer spiral they were known for. Their irrationality and their strange social behaviors. The human's eyes opened suddenly. They were brown and filled with pain. The creature looked directly at Vexstar and tried to speak. Only weak sounds came out. Vexstar checked his scanner. The human was dying. Its life signs were failing rapidly. Multiple injuries. Blood loss. Exposure to toxic gases. Without immediate medical attention, it would be dead within hours. The logical choice was clear. Humans were not his responsibility. He had no orders to rescue alien survivors. His mission was to maintain the atmospheric processors. Nothing more, but something made him hesitate. The human kept looking at him, not with fear, but with hope. As if it believed this strange, crystalline being might actually help. Vexstar had never seen such determination before. The human was clearly in terrible pain, probably dying, but it refused to give up. It kept trying to communicate, kept fighting to stay conscious. Most creatures would have surrendered by now, but not this human. The scanner beeped urgently. The human's vital signs were dropping fast. Decision time. Vexstar made a choice that went against everything his species had taught him. He activated his emergency medical kit and began working. On the human's injuries, the creature was surprisingly light as Vexstar carried it to his crawler. He drove back to the station as quickly as the rough terrain allowed. Every bump made the human groan with pain, but it never stopped trying to speak. Back at the station, Vexstar placed the human in his medical bay. The basic equipment wasn't designed for alien physiology, but it was better than nothing. He cleaned the wounds and applied synthetic skin patches. He connected an IV drip to replace lost fluids. The human drifted in and out of consciousness for the next several days. It was awake. It would look at Vexstar with those strange brown eyes. Sometimes it would try to speak, but Vexstar couldn't understand the alien language. On the fourth day, the human's condition stabilized. It could sit up and drink water, as Vexstar learned that the creature needed food frequently, unlike his own species that could go weeks without eating. He shared his emergency rations with the human. The creature seemed grateful, making gestures and sounds that Vexstar interpreted as thanks. This puzzled him. Why waste energy on gratitude when that energy could be used for healing? The human's name, as far as Vexstar could understand, was something like Park Dae-ho. It seemed to be some kind of engineer or technician based on how it examined the station's equipment with obvious knowledge and interest. Park Dae-ho proved to be remarkably resilient. Within a week, it was walking around the station. Within 2 weeks, it was actually helping with minor repairs. The human seemed determined to contribute something in return for being saved. This behavior fascinated Vexstar. Some people would have simply taken the aid and moved on. But this human felt compelled to give something back. During the 3rd week, Park Dae-ho managed to repair Vexstar's communication array. The human had somehow figured out the Helix technology and improved its efficiency by 12%. Was impressed despite himself when the communication system came online. Park Dae-ho immediately sent out a distress signal. Within hours, they received a response. A human rescue ship was already searching the sector and would arrive within 2 days. As they waited for rescue, Park Dae-ho did something unexpected. It began learning Helix language from the station's computer. Simple words at first, then basic phrases. On the last evening before the rescue ship arrived, Park Dae-ho spoke to Vexstar in broken but understandable Helix. "You saved my life," the human said slowly. "I was dying. You had no reason to help me, but you did anyway." Vexstar didn't know how to respond. Helping had seemed like the right choice at the time, though he couldn't explain why. "I will never forget this," Park Dae-ho continued. "Never. When humans receive kindness, we remember it always. We carry it with us." The words seemed overly dramatic to Vexstar. Humans were known for their emotional exaggerations, so kindness will not be wasted, Park Dae-ho said. "Someday, somehow, I will find a way to repay this debt." Vexstar considered explaining that no debt existed. It simply made a choice. But something in the human's voice stopped him. Park Dae-ho wasn't just making empty promises. This creature truly meant every word. The rescue ship arrived the next morning. As Park Dae-ho prepared to leave, it took Vexstar's crystalline hand in its soft flesh once. "Thank you, my friend," the human said. "I owe you my life. I will never forget that. Never." Then Park Dae-ho was gone, carried away by the human ship toward the stars. Vexstar returned to his daily routine. The station seemed quieter than before. The work continued as efficiently as ever. But sometimes during the long empty hours, he found himself thinking about those determined brown eyes and that promise of remembrance. He didn't understand then that he had just set in motion events that would reshape the galaxy. All he knew was that helping the human had felt right, even if it made no logical sense. In the databases of the rescue ship, a report was filed about the Helix engineer who had saved a stranded human's life. Park Dae-ho made sure every detail was recorded. The name Vexstar was entered into human records, along with a single notation that would follow it forever. "Friend of humanity, debt unpaid." The words seemed simple enough. Vexstar would have dismissed them as typical human sentiment. But he didn't understand the true power of human memory, or how dangerous it could be when humans decided they owed someone a favor. That understanding would come later, and the galaxy itself would tremble under the weight of human gratitude. 5 years passed like distant stars in the void. Vexstar continued his work on the remote mining stations, moving from one assignment to another. The memory of the human named Park Dae-ho had faded to a small, warm thought that occasionally surfaced during quiet moments. The Helix Command rarely gave explanations for their orders. So when Vexstar received assignment to the joint terraforming project on Proxima 7, he simply packed his equipment and prepared for another routine mission. Proxima 7 was different from anything he had experienced. The planet buzzed with activity. As multiple species worked together to transform the world into a garden paradise, massive atmospheric processors hummed day and night. Construction mechs built cities while the ground was still being prepared for life. The scale amazed Vexstar. Dozens of species contributed their expertise. The insectoid builders created living structures that grew from the soil. The aquatic depth singers filled the new oceans with carefully balanced ecosystems. And everywhere, coordinating the massive effort, were humans. Vexstar reported to the Central Command Center on his first day. The building was a masterpiece of interspecies design, with sections adapted for different environmental needs. He found the assignment office and waited patiently in line. When his turn came, he approached the desk where a human sat reviewing files. The human looked up, and their face changed completely. Their eyes widened in recognition and joy. "Vexstar of the Helix," the human said in perfect Helix language. "I have waited 5 years to see you again." Vexstar looked closer at the human. The face was older, marked by years of hard work and responsibility, but those brown eyes were unmistakable. "Park Deho," Vexstar said slowly. "You are here." "Park." Deho stood up and bowed deeply, a gesture of profound respect among humans. Other species in the office stopped their work to watch. "You saved my life," Park Deho said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "This is Vexstar, the engineer who found me dying in a crash on Kepler 442b. He had no reason to help me, but he did anyway. He shared his food, his medicine, his shelter. Without him, I would be dead." The reaction in the office was immediate. Every human present turned to look at Vexstar with new interest. But more than interest, he saw something else in their faces. Respect, gratitude, as if they personally owed him a debt. Park Deho had become the project coordinator, responsible for managing the human teams. His first action was to ensure Vexstar received the best possible assignment. Instead of routine maintenance work, Vexstar found himself leading a team designing new atmospheric processing systems. "You deserve the finest accommodations, Park," Deho explained as he showed Vexstar to his quarters. The rooms were spacious and equipped with everything a Helix engineer could need. Nothing is too good for someone who showed such kindness. But the special treatment didn't stop with Park Deho. At dinner that evening, Vexstar discovered that every human on the project knew his story. A human engineer named Kim Soo-jin approached his table. "You're Vexstar," she said with a warm smile. "Park Deho told me about you. Thank you for saving him. He's become like a father to many of us younger engineers." Another human, Lee Jae-won, joined the conversation. "Your own rations with him for 3 weeks? That kind of sacrifice doesn't go unnoticed among humans." Vexstar felt confused. "I've never met either of you before. Why do you speak as if you know me?" Kim Soo-jin and Lee Jae-won exchanged glances. "When a human tells us about someone who showed them kindness, we remember that person too," Kim Soo-jin explained. "Your good deed becomes part of our shared story." This was completely alien to Vexstar's understanding. His people acknowledged individual achievements, but didn't share them emotionally. Each Helix was responsible only for their own actions and reputation. Over the following weeks, Vexstar discovered just how thoroughly humans had shared his story. Engineers who had never worked with Park Deho directly still knew about the Helix, who had saved a stranded human. They treated Vexstar with unusual warmth and consideration. When Vexstar needed specialized equipment for his atmospheric processors, human technicians found ways to get it for him immediately. When he requested additional computing power for his calculations, human programmers volunteered their time to help. When he mentioned that the standard nutrition bars didn't provide the minerals his crystalline body needed, human supply officers located proper Helix food from across the galaxy. "Why do you do this, Vexstar?" asked Kim Soo-jin one day as she helped him calibrate sensitive instruments. "I have done nothing for you personally." Kim Soo-jin paused in her work. "You saved Park Deho's life. Park Deho has mentored dozens of young engineers over the years. He taught me how to design efficient atmospheric systems," yelped Lee Jae-won. "Recover from a terrible accident that nearly ended his career. Without Park Deho, many of us wouldn't be here today. She continued adjusting the instruments as she spoke. So when we help you, we're hammering the chain of kindness that started with your choice to save a dying stranger. It's how humans work. We remember good deeds, and we pass them forward. The concept fascinated Vexstar. Humans didn't just remember kindness shown to them personally. They remembered kindness shown to other humans and treated it as if they had been the recipients themselves. This became even more apparent when new human teams arrived on 7-7. Engineers from other projects, construction crews from distant colonies, scientists who had never met Park Dae-ho, all seemed to know Vexstar's name and story. A supply ship captain named Cho Yeon-hee refused to accept payment for delivering Vexstar's specialized equipment. "Any friend of Park Dae-ho flies free on my ship," she declared. "Now that man has helped more people than you can count." Dr. Han Borum, a terraforming specialist who had worked with Park Dae-ho years earlier, shared her latest research data with Vexstar. "Without being asked, Park told me you have an intuitive understanding of atmospheric dynamics," she explained. "I want to see what you can do with these new techniques." The project progressed faster than anyone had expected. Vexstar's atmospheric processors, enhanced by human support and collaboration, created breathable air months ahead of schedule. His innovative designs impressed even the Helix Command, who rarely praised individual achievements, but Vexstar noticed that his success wasn't really individual at all. Every breakthrough came from collaboration with humans who treated him like family. They shared their knowledge freely, worked extra hours to support his projects, and celebrated his achievements as if they were their own during the project's completion ceremony. Park Dae-ho made a speech to the assembled workers from all species. He spoke about the importance of cooperation and mutual support in creating new worlds 5 years ago. Park Dae-ho said, "I was dying alone on a remote station. A Helix engineer named Vexstar chose to save my life when logic said he should let me die. That choice didn't just save one human. It created a friendship that has made all of our work here possible." The crowd applauded, but Park Dae-ho wasn't finished. Vexstar's kindness has rippled outward like waves in still water. Every human who has heard his story feels a connection to him. Every human who has worked with him has become a better engineer. His choice to help a stranger has made our entire species better. After the ceremony, Vexstar walked with Park Dae-ho through the new gardens they had helped create. The air was clean and sweet, filled with the scent of growing plants. "I still don't understand," Vexstar admitted. "Why do humans share stories of kindness with such intensity? My people would have simply noted the event and moved on." Park Dae-ho smiled. "Because kindness is rare in the universe. When we find it, we treasure it. We tell others about it so they know such goodness exists. We honor those who show it because we want to encourage more of it." He picked up a small stone and threw it into a nearby pond. Ripples spread outward in perfect circles. "Your kindness was like that stone," Park Dae-ho said. "The ripples are still spreading. They'll keep spreading for as long as humans remember your story." Vexstar watched the ripples fade into stillness. He was beginning to understand that humans didn't just remember kindness, they transformed it into something larger. They made individual good deeds into shared values. "Where will you go next?" Park Dae-ho asked. "The Helix Command has promoted me to interspecies liaison," Vexstar replied. "They believe I have special abilities for working with other species." Park Dae-ho laughed. "They're not wrong. You just don't realize what those abilities are yet." As Vexstar prepared to leave Proxima 7, dozens of humans came to say goodbye. They gave him gifts, shared contact information, and promised to help him in future assignments. Kim Soo-jin presented him with a small crystal pendant. "This contains atmospheric readings from every world where humans and Helix have worked together," she explained. "Wherever you go, you'll carry a piece of our partnership with you." Vexstar accepted the gift with growing understanding. The humans weren't just being sentimental. They were building a network, connecting him to their species through bonds of shared gratitude and friendship. He didn't realize yet that this network would soon span the entire galaxy, with his name at its center. All he knew was that his simple act of saving one human had somehow grown into something much larger than himself. The seeds of gratitude had been planted. Soon they would begin to bloom. Vextor's new role as interspecies liaison took him to worlds he had never imagined. Trade stations, diplomatic outposts, research facilities, and colony worlds all needed experts who could help different species work together effectively. Surprised him most was how often he encountered humans, already knew his name. His first assignment was at the massive trading hub of Gateway Station, where hundreds of species came to buy and sell goods from across the galaxy. The station master, a gruff Helix administrator named Zethkar, briefed Vextar on his duties. "Your job is to prevent conflicts between species," Zethkar explained. "It's different cultures, different needs, different ways of thinking. It causes problems. Fix them." Vextar expected his work to be challenging. Different species had different customs, different concepts of fairness, different approaches to negotiation. Building understanding between them required patience and skill. But he quickly discovered that humans made his job much easier. On his second day, a dispute erupted between insectoid traders and aquatic merchants over shipping containers that had been contaminated with the wrong atmospheric mix. The insectoids were threatening to leave the station. The aquatics were demanding compensation. Both sides were angry and unwilling to compromise. Vexta was preparing to mediate the complex negotiation when a human merchant named Captain Cho Yunhai approached him. "You're Vextar, aren't you?" she said with a bright smile. "The engineer who saved Park Daeho." Vextar confirmed his identity, wondering how this human knew the story. "Park Daeho is a legend among human traders," Cho Yunhai explained. "He designed the atmospheric systems for half the colonies we visit. Everyone knows about the Helix engineer who saved his life." Before Vextar could respond, Cho Yunhai was already walking toward the arguing traders. "Friends," she called out, in the trade language most species understood. "I want you to meet someone special. This is Vextar of the Helix. He once saved a human's life when he had no reason to help. He shared his food and medicine with a dying stranger for 3 weeks. The effect was immediate. The insectoids and aquatics stopped arguing to listen." Stories of kindness and sacrifice were respected by most species, even in the middle of business disputes. "If Vextar is mediating this disagreement," Cho Yunhai continued, "then you know he will be fair and honest. He has proven his character. Through his actions, the negotiation that followed was surprisingly smooth." Both sides trusted Vextar's judgment because of his reputation for selfless kindness. They accepted his proposed solution without the usual lengthy arguments. After the traders left, Vextar asked Cho Yunhai why she had helped him. "Park Daeho saved my daughter's life once," she replied. "She was trapped in a collapsed building. On Kepler 7, Park Daeho crawled through unstable wreckage to reach her, even though it could have killed him. Got her out safely." She paused to check her cargo manifest, then continued speaking. "When someone saves a human, they become family. To all of us. Park Daeho has told your story to every human he's met. We all know about your kindness. We all remember it." This pattern repeated everywhere Vextar went. Humans would recognize his name, share how they connected to Park Daeho's story, and then go out of their way to help him succeed in his work. At the research station on Titan IX, Dr. Han Borum introduced him to the other scientists as the Helix, who proved that compassion exists throughout the galaxy. Her endorsement immediately earned him respect from researchers of multiple species. On the mining colony of New Perth, human foreman Lee Jae-won had already told the mixed species workforce about Vextar's heroic rescue. When labor disputes arose, workers from different species trusted Vextar to find fair solutions because they had heard about his character. The most surprising encounter happened at a diplomatic conference on the neutral world of Harmony. Vextar was attending as an observer, learning about interspecies negotiations. When he met Ambassador Yang Tae-ho of the human delegation, Ambassador Yang said during a break between sessions, "I have wanted to meet you for years. Park Daeho speaks of you often." "You know Park Daeho personally?" Vextar asked. "He designed the life support systems for our embassy ships," Yang replied. "Brilliant engineer. But more than that, he's become a symbol of human-alien cooperation. His story about you has inspired many of our diplomatic policies. Young explained that Park Dae-ho had settled on the human colony world of New Seoul, where he lived with his wife Jung Mi-young and their children. But his influence had grown far beyond one world. He established something called the Vexstar Foundation. Yang said it provides aid to stranded travelers of any species, anywhere in human space. No questions asked, no payment required, just help for those who need it. The foundation had already rescued thousands of beings from dozens of species. Ship crews in distress, explorers lost in uncharted systems, refugees fleeing conflicts, researchers stranded on dangerous worlds. All received aid in Vexstar's name. Every person who receives help from the Foundation hears your story, Yang continued. They learn about the Helix engineer who saved a human stranger because it was the right thing to do. Your example spreads throughout the galaxy. Vexstar felt overwhelmed by this information. His simple act of kindness had somehow grown into an entire organization dedicated to helping others, but the network of human gratitude extended even further than he realized. During his travels, Vexstar began to notice patterns in how humans treated him. Spaceport workers would upgrade him too. Better accommodations without being asked. Merchants would offer him favorable prices on supplies. Engineers would share their latest research with him freely. Scientists would invite him to collaborate on projects. When he asked why, the answer was always the same. Any friend of Park Dae-ho is a friend of ours. The story had taken on a life of its own. Humans who had never met Park Dae-ho personally still knew about Vexstar's rescue. They had heard it from friends, colleagues, or family members. The tale had spread through human networks like ripples in an endless pond. Even more remarkably, non-human species had begun to hear the story too. Vexstar's reputation for fairness and compassion, originally based on his treatment of one human, now influenced how other species perceived the Helix people as a whole. A crystalline trader told him, "I always thought Helix were cold and logical, but then I heard about you. If one Helix can show such kindness, maybe your people aren't so different from us," an aquatic diplomat said. "Your story gives me hope. In a galaxy full of conflicts, it's good to know that some beings still choose compassion over convenience." The Helix Command began to notice these changes. Vexstar's reports showed consistently successful negotiations and resolved disputes. Projects finished ahead of schedule. Other species specifically requested his involvement in their agreements. Commander Cathell called Vexstar to headquarters for a performance review. "Your success rate is extraordinary," Cathell said, reviewing
The files.
97% of your mediated disputes reach peaceful resolution. 89% of species report improved relations with Helix after working with you. How do you explain these results? Vexstar wasn't sure how to answer. "I believe other species trust me because of my reputation for fairness." "And how did you develop this reputation?" Cathell pressed. Vexstar hesitated, then decided to tell the truth. He explained about saving Park Dae-ho years earlier, and how humans had shared that story throughout their networks. Cathell listened with growing amazement. "You mean your success is based on one act of kindness to a single human?" "The humans seem to value such acts highly," Vexstar replied. "They remember them and share them with others." "Remarkable," Cathell said. "We had assumed you possessed some special diplomatic skill. Instead, you've somehow earned the loyalty of an entire species through personal virtue." The commander promoted Vexstar to senior liaison and assigned him to the most important interspecies projects. But privately, Cathell began studying human behavior patterns. The concept of shared gratitude was completely foreign to Helix thinking, meanwhile. On New Seoul, Park Dae-ho continued his work with quiet satisfaction. His children, Park Nare and Cho Hyun-soo, had grown up hearing stories about the kind Helix engineer who had saved their father's life. They carried those stories to their schools, their friends, their eventual careers. The Vexstar Foundation had expanded to operate rescue ships throughout human space. Each rescue mission began with the story of how one alien's compassion had inspired an entire movement of mutual AI. Jung Mi-young, Park Dae-ho's wife, worked as a teacher. She used Vextar's story in her class is to show children that kindness could cross any boundary of species or culture. Remember, she would tell her students, Vextar didn't help your father because they were the same species. He didn't help because it was profitable or logical. He helped because it was right. That kind of goodness exists in every intelligent being waiting to be awakened. The children would grow up believing that the universe contained beings like Vextar, ready to show compassion to strangers. They would expect such kindness and be prepared to offer it themselves. None of them realized that they were building something unprecedented in galactic history. A network of shared values, mutual support, and remembered kindness that spanned thousands of worlds and billions of beings. 20 years had passed since Vextar first found Park Daeho dying in a crashed escape pod. The galaxy had changed in ways both subtle and profound. Though few beings understood the connections between a simple act of kindness and the vast networks of cooperation that now existed, Vextar had become one of the most respected diplomats in known space. His reputation for fairness and wisdom preceded him to every negotiation. The Helix Command valued him as their greatest asset in interspecies relations. Though they still didn't fully understand why other species trusted him so completely, he was reviewing trade agreements on the peaceful world of Haven 3 when the emergency alert came through. All diplomatic personnel were ordered to report immediately to the Galactic Council chambers on Concordia Prime. The message contained only one additional word: crisis. The journey to Concordia Prime took 3 days through hyperspace. Vextar spent the time reading intelligence reports that grew more disturbing with each page. Long-range sensors had detected massive fleets moving through the outer rim systems. Entire worlds had gone silent. The few escape pods that made it to safety carried survivors with stories of impossible destruction. The Void Hunters had returned. Vextar had studied the Void Hunters in his diplomatic training, but they were considered more myth than reality. An ancient nomadic race that consumed entire worlds for their energy, stripping away atmospheres, oceans, and all life before moving on to the next target. They had vanished from known space over 1,000 years ago, leaving behind only dead rocks and terrified legends. Now they were back, and their technology had apparently advanced far beyond what any current civilization could match. The Galactic Council chambers buzzed with desperate activity when Vextar arrived. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the Great Hall, their voices creating a chaos of different languages and communication methods. Fear radiated from every delegation. Vextar found his place among the Helix delegation. Commander Kethel briefed him quickly on the situation. The Void Hunters have consumed 17 systems in the past month, Kethel said grimly. Their fleet numbers in the thousands. Our best estimates suggest they can strip a planet clean in less than 48 hours. What is their target? Vextar asked.
Unknown.
They seem to be moving randomly through the outer rim, but long-range analysis suggests they're eventually heading toward the core systems, including Crystalla Prime, the Helix homeworld. Vextar felt a chill run through his crystalline structure. The emergency session began with reports from the few survivors who had escaped the Void Hunter attacks. Their testimonies painted a picture of overwhelming force and ruthless efficiency. The Void Hunters had technology that could disable entire fleets within minutes. Their ships were massive, armored, and apparently immune to most conventional weapons. Fleet Admiral Zexamore of the Helix presented the military analysis. Based on current data, no single species possesses sufficient force to resist the Void Hunter advance. Coalition efforts might slow them down, but our probability calculations show less than 12% chance of stopping them entirely. The hall erupted in debate. Some species called for immediate evacuation of threatened worlds. Others demanded military action regardless of the odds. A few suggested attempting diplomatic contact with the Void Hunters, though survivors reported that the ancient race showed no interest in communication. As the arguments continued, Vextar noticed a familiar figure entering the hall. Park Daeho, now an elderly human with gray hair and weathered features, walked slowly toward the human delegation. He moved with the careful steps of someone whose body had been worn down by decades of hard work.
Ow.
But his eyes still held the same determined spirit Vextar remembered. Park Daeho had become something of a legend over the years. His engineering innovations had improved life support systems throughout human space. The Vexstar Foundation had grown into one of the galaxy's most respected humanitarian organizations. Most importantly, his story had inspired countless acts of kindness and cooperation between species. But he was still just one human, representing a species that was relatively young and small compared to the ancient powers of the galaxy. The debate continued for hours without resolution. The mathematics were brutally clear. Even if every species contributed their entire military force, the combined fleet would still be outmatched by the Void Hunters. Most representatives began discussing evacuation plans and refugee settlements. Then, Park Dae-ho requested permission to speak. The hall fell quiet as the elderly human walked slowly to the central podium. His voice was soft but carried clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. 20 years ago, Park Dae-ho began. I was dying alone on a remote mining station. My ship had crashed. I was bleeding to death in toxic atmosphere, with no hope of rescue. Vexstar straightened in his seat. He hadn't expected Park Dae-ho to tell this story here, in front of the entire Galactic Council. A Helix engineer named Vexstar found me, Park Dae-ho continued. He had no orders to help aliens. His species values logic and efficiency above emotion. By every rational calculation, he should have left me to die. The human's voice grew stronger as he spoke, but Vexstar chose compassion over logic. Saved my life, shared his food and medicine, cared for me until rescue arrived. He asked for nothing in return. Murmurs spread through the hall as representatives tried to understand why this personal story was relevant to their current crisis. I told Vexstar that I would never forget his kindness, Park Dae-ho said. I promised that his good deed would not be wasted. Today, I keep that promise. The elderly human turned toward the Helix delegation and found Vexstar with his eyes. Vexstar's homeworld faces destruction. The place where the being who saved my life was born, where his people live and work and dream, will be consumed by an ancient evil unless we act. Park Dae-ho faced the assembled council with renewed strength. I speak for humanity when I say this. We will defend Crystalla Prime. We will stand with the Helix against the Void Hunters. We will honor the debt we owe to one alien's compassion, regardless of the cost. The announcement sent shockwaves through the hall. Humanity was offering to risk their entire civilization to protect a world that wasn't even their own. Ambassador Young Tae-ho stood to support Park Dae-ho's declaration. The human delegation confirms this commitment. Our fleets will move immediately to Crystalla Prime's defense. This is madness, called out a crystalline representative. Humanity lacks the military strength to make any significant difference. You're offering to commit suicide? Park Dae-ho smiled sadly. You don't understand how humans work. We're not just offering our own ships. He activated a holographic display that showed communication networks spanning the galaxy. Thousands of lines connected human colonies, trade routes, diplomatic posts, and research stations. For 20 years, we have shared Vexstar's story throughout these networks. Every human knows about the Helix engineer who chose kindness over logic. Every human feels a personal debt to the species that produced such compassion. The display zoomed in to show individual connection points. Each one represented relationships between humans and other species, built on the foundation of mutual respect that Vexstar's example had inspired. Today, we activate every friendship, every alliance, every bond of gratitude and cooperation that has grown from one alien's choice to save a stranger's life. As if coordinated, human representatives throughout the hall began standing and making announcements. Captain Cho Yun-hee, now an admiral, declared that the human merchant fleet would provide logistics support. Dr. Han Borum announced that the research consortium would share their most advanced defensive technologies. Engineer Kim Soo-jin revealed that human colonies had been secretly preparing defensive platforms for just such a crisis. But more importantly, humans began calling upon their non-human friends and partners, the aquatic depths singers, who had worked closely with human terraformers, offered their underwater construction capabilities for building hidden bases. The insectoid builders, grateful for human assistance during their expansion period, promised to create fortified structures on Crystalla Prime. Species after species began reconsidering their positions as human advocates, reminded them of past cooperation and shared projects. The Taurian Trade Consortium owes humanity for the medical aid we provided during the Red Plague outbreak, announced a reptilian delegate. We will honor that debt. Human engineers helped us rebuild after the Gamma Storm disasters, added an avian representative. The Sky Dancers will not forget. The momentum built as more species found reasons to join the unprecedented alliance. Each had worked with humans on some project, received some assistance, or benefited from some human innovation. The network of relationships that had grown around Vexter's story began to reveal its true scope. Vexter watched in amazement as his simple act of kindness transformed into the largest interspecies military alliance in galactic history. Dozens of civilizations were committing their forces to defend a world they had no obligation to protect, all because humans refused to forget a debt of gratitude. The Helix delegation sat in stunned silence. They had expected to face extinction with only their own resources. Instead, they were witnessing the birth of something unprecedented. A coalition built not on mutual interest or political necessity, but on the human inability to let kindness go unrewarded. Park Deho returned to his seat, his mission accomplished. As he passed Vextar, the elderly human paused. "I told you I would never forget," Park Deho said quietly. "I told you that. Your kindness would not be wasted." Today, the galaxy learns what it means to help a human. The council session continued late into the night as species after species joined the alliance. Military commanders began coordinating the massive fleet that would defend Crystalla Prime. Scientists shared technologies that had never been revealed before. Engineers designed new weapons and defensive systems. But at the center of it all was the simple truth that Park Deho had shared. When you aid a human, they never let it go. Their appreciation could indeed alter the fate of worlds. The Void Hunters were coming. But they would face something they had never encountered in their 1,000-year journey of destruction. A galaxy united by gratitude, strengthened by remembered kindness, willing to die before they would let compassion go unarrayed. The battle for Crystalla Prime would determine whether love could truly be stronger than hunger, whether cooperation could defeat consumption, whether one alien's choice to save a stranger could echo powerfully enough to save entire civilizations. The greatest test of human gratitude was about to begin. The transformation of the galaxy began within hours of Park Deho's speech. What started as a desperate plea for help became the most massive mobilization in recorded history. But this wasn't ordinary military preparation. This was something entirely new, an alliance built on emotional bonds rather than political calculation. Vextar watched from the Helix Command Center. Fleets from dozens of species converged on Crystalla Prime. The coordination should have been impossible. Different technologies, different communication systems, different military doctrines. Yet somehow, the vast armada was taking shape with remarkable efficiency. The secret was human involvement at every level. Park Deho had established himself as the unofficial coordinator of the alliance. Despite his advanced age, he worked tirelessly from the command ship, using his vast network of personal relationships to solve problems that would have taken diplomats weeks to negotiate. When aquatic ships couldn't dock with crystalline stations due to environmental incompatibility, Park Deho contacted Dr. Han Borum, who had developed universal docking systems years earlier. She immediately shared the technology and supervised its installation. When sectoid builders needed rare materials for defensive structures, Park Deho reached out to Captain Cho Yan-hee, whose merchant contacts located the resources and transported them free of charge. Her entire fleet had volunteered their services, saying any friend of Park Deho flies free. Every challenge met with solutions that came not through official channels, but through personal connections built on shared gratitude. In remembered kindness, Dar found himself at the center of this unprecedented cooperation. Species that had never worked together before trusted his mediation because they knew his story. His reputation for selfless compassion had become a bridge between civilizations. Your presence here changes everything, Admiral Yang Teho told him during a strategy meeting. When other species see that you're fighting to defend your own world, they understand the stakes. You're not just a hero to them anymore. You're family. The word family had become central to human discussions of the Alliance. They didn't speak of military obligations or political treaties. They spoke of defending relatives, of honoring ancestors, of protecting the future for their children. Young Myung, Park Daho's wife, had arrived on one of the hospital ships with their children. She now worked in the refugee centers, helping evacuate civilians from worlds in the Void Hunter's path. But she also served another crucial role. She told Vexstar's story to every being she met. "This is why we fight," she would say, too scared. Families from dozens of species. Because once, when hope seemed lost, someone chose kindness over convenience. That choice created ripples that spread across the galaxy. Today, those ripples have become a wave strong enough to push back the darkness. Evacuees would listen to her words and find comfort in them. The idea that their salvation came from an ancient act of compassion gave them hope that goodness could triumph over evil. Park Na-re and Cho Haeonsu, now adults with children of their own, had followed their parents into service. Park Na-re commanded an engineering corps that worked around the clock to fortify Crystalla Prime's defenses. Cho Haeonsu led communication teams that kept the massive alliance coordinated. Despite the chaos of preparation, both carried their father's story wherever they went, inspiring volunteers from every species to work beyond their normal limits. "My father was saved by alien kindness," Park Na-re would tell exhausted workers. "Today we return that kindness to the universe. Every bolt we tighten, every system we install, every hour we work without rest, honors the choice that saved his life." The defensive preparations took on an almost religious fervor. Beings who had never met Vexstar personally still felt connected to his story. They worked with the dedication of people defending sacred ground. The insectoid builders constructed underground shelters that could protect entire cities. The aquatic depth singers created submarine bases hidden in Crystalla Prime's polar seas. The crystalline architects designed energy shields powered by the planet's own core. But the most remarkable development was how the story continued to spread. Every species brought their own interpretation of Vexstar's rescue. The insectoids saw it as proof that individual actions could benefit the entire hive. The aquatics viewed it as evidence that currents of kindness flowed through all life. The crystallines understood it as the ultimate expression of structural integrity, where one strong component strengthened the entire lattice. Each culture found their own meaning in the tale, but all reached the same conclusion. This was worth fighting for, Commander. Kethel approached Vexstar as he watched the massive construction efforts from the command center's observation deck. "I don't understand what's happening," Kethel admitted. "Our probability calculations showed minimal chance of species cooperation on this scale, yet they're working together as if they've been allies for centuries." Vexstar considered his response carefully. "They're not fighting for political reasons. They're fighting for personal ones. Each being here has been touched somehow by the network of relationships that grew from Park Daho's story." "But you saved only one human," Kethel protested. "Can that single act motivate billions of beings?" "Because humans don't keep kindness to themselves," Vexstar replied. "They share it, multiply it, transform it into something larger. My choice to help Park Daho became their choice to help everyone they encountered." The gratitude spread like ripples in water until it touched every corner of their civilization. As if to demonstrate his point, a group of young beings from multiple species approached the observation deck. They carried a gift, a crystal sculpture that depicted Vexstar carrying an injured human to safety. "We made this together," said their spokesperson, a young crystalline whose parents had worked on human projects. "To honor the story that brought us all here, the sculpture was crude but heartfelt. Each species had contributed elements from their own artistic traditions. The result was something entirely new. Art created by multiple civilizations working as one." "Your story taught us that different doesn't mean enemy," the young crystalline continued. "Today we fight not just for Crystalla Prime, but for the idea that the galaxy can be a place where beings help each other across any boundary. After the group left, Kethel stared at the sculpture in silence. The human approach to gratitude is unprecedented. He finally said, "They've weaponized appreciation." The phrase stuck. Throughout the Alliance, military commanders began using it to describe their unprecedented situation. They hadn't just assembled a fleet. They had weaponized 20 years of accumulated goodwill. But even as the preparations continued, disturbing reports arrived from the Outer Rim. The Void Hunter fleet was larger than anyone had imagined. Thousands of massive ships, each one capable of stripping an entire world clean of life. Their technology was so advanced that conventional weapons barely scratched their holes. More troubling were reports of their tactics. The Void Hunters didn't just destroy worlds. They seemed to feed on the destruction itself, growing stronger with each planet they consumed. Some survivors reported seeing the ancient ships, literally absorbing the life energy from dying worlds. The Alliance faced an enemy that became more powerful with every victory. Dr. Han Borum called an emergency science meeting to address this challenge. Representatives from the most advanced species gathered to share their knowledge and develop new strategies. "Traditional weapons are useless," she announced grimly. "But we have something the Void Hunters have never encountered. Unprecedented. Cooperation between species. We need to find ways to use that unity as a weapon." The scientific breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Kim Soo-jin, now an elderly engineer, but still brilliant, proposed a radical idea. "What if we could create a network effect with our defensive systems?" she suggested. Each ship, each platform, each planetary defense grid connected not just through communication, but through shared energy distribution. When they attack one part of our forces, they face the combined power of the entire alliance. The concept was theoretically possible, but had never been attempted on such a scale. It would require perfect trust and coordination between species that had historically been enemies or strangers. "The technical challenges are enormous," warned a Helix scientist. "Any failure in the network could cascade through the entire system, leaving us completely vulnerable." "But if it works," added an aquatic researcher, "we could create a defense that grows stronger under attack. It's just like our alliance has grown stronger through shared purpose." The decision to attempt the network defense was unanimous.
Ow.
Every species committed their most advanced technology to the project. They shared secrets that had been guarded for centuries, trusting their former enemies with knowledge that could destroy them. The trust came from one source. Vextar's example had proven that beings could choose cooperation over self-interest, even when logic suggested otherwise. Construction teams worked around the clock to install the network connections. The technical challenges were staggering, but somehow solutions emerged. When human engineers couldn't solve a power distribution problem, crystalline mathematicians provided the calculations. When aquatic technicians struggled with incompatible interfac, the Void Hunter fleet emerged from hyperspace like a plague of darkness against the stars. Thousands of massive ships, each one larger than the biggest Alliance vessel, arranged themselves in perfect formations that spoke of ancient military precision. Their hulls absorbed light rather than reflecting it, creating holes in space where nothing should exist. Vextar watched from the Alliance command ship as long-range. Sensors revealed the true scope of their enemy. The Void Hunters had grown far more powerful during their 1,000-year absence. Their technology was beyond anything the galaxy had ever faced. "Fleet composition confirms our worst estimates," reported Admiral Yang Taeho grimly. 3,000 heavy destroyers, 500 world killers, and something at the center that's larger than anything in our databases. The massive central ship was the size of a small moon, covered in structures that pulsed with energy drawn from consumed worlds. Intelligence suggested it was the Void Hunters' command vessel, where their ancient leaders directed the endless hunger that drove their species against this terrifying armada. The Alliance had assembled their own forces. 700 ships from 37 different species, supported by the orbital platforms and planetary defenses of Crystalla Prime. By any rational calculation, they were hopelessly outmatched, but rational calculation hadn't built this alliance. Human gratitude had, All ships report network connection established, announced Kim Soo-jin from the engineering station. Defensive grid is fully operational. Power sharing protocols are active. The network defense system represented the Alliance's greatest gamble. Every ship, platform, defensive installation was connected through quantum encrypted channels that allowed them to share energy, processing power, and tactical information instantaneously. An attack on any part of the network would be met by the combined response of the entire Alliance. The system had never been tested in actual combat. If it failed, the Alliance would be more vulnerable than if they had fought as separate units. Incoming transmission from the Void Hunter fleet, reported the communications officer. The view screen activated to show something that barely looked alive. The Void Hunter leader was a mass of writhing darkness held together by crackling energy. Its voice sounded like the death of stars. Ancient prey, it spoke in a language that the universal translators struggled to process. You gather here, like insects drawn to flame. We've consumed 1,000 worlds since last we fed in this region. Your resistance will make the feeding sweeter. Admiral Yang responded for the Alliance. We are here to defend this world and its people. Withdraw from this system, and no harm will come to you. The Void Hunter's laugh was the sound of dying suns. Harm. You speak of harm to beings who have fed on the life of galaxies. We are hunger incarnate. We are the ending of all things. What can mere gratitude accomplish against such power? The transmission ended, and the Void Hunter fleet began its advance. They know about the gratitude, Vexstar observed with surprise. They understand what built this alliance. They've had 1,000 years to study our species, Yang replied. But understanding and experiencing are different things. Learn what human appreciation can accomplish when it spreads across the galaxy. The first wave of Void Hunter destroyers attacked the outer defensive perimeter. Their weapons were beyond anything the Alliance had encountered. Beams of pure entropy that aged matter into dust, gravity wells that crushed ships like insects, and something that appeared to drain the life force from organic crew members. But as each attack struck the Alliance defenses, something remarkable happened. The network absorbed the damage and distributed it across hundreds of ships and platforms. A weapon that should have destroyed a cruiser in seconds found its power dissipated among dozens of vessels, each one sharing the burden. More importantly, the network learned from each attack. As Void Hunter weapons struck Alliance ships, the defensive systems adapted and shared their improvements instantaneously. By the time the second wave attacked, every vessel in the Alliance had defenses specifically calibrated to resist Void Hunter technology. Network efficiency increasing? Kim Soo-jin reported with excitement. We're not just sharing damage anymore. We're sharing solutions. Every successful defense strengthens the entire Alliance. The Void Hunters had never encountered anything like this. Their ancient tactics were based on overwhelming individual targets with superior firepower. But the Alliance didn't fight as individuals. They fought as a single organism made of many parts, each one strengthening the others. Second wave destroyed, reported the tactical officer. No Alliance losses. Void Hunter fleet is repositioning. On the surface of Crystalla Prime, Park Dae-ho watched the battle from the primary evacuation center. His age and frail health prevented him from joining the fighting directly. But his presence gave hope to the millions of refugees from dozens of species who had fled the Void Hunter advance. Tell me the story again, asked a young insectoid whose colony had been destroyed in the Outer Rim. Tell me about the engineer who saved your life. Park Dae-ho smiled and gathered the children around him. They came from species that had historically been enemies, but here they sat together, united by shared hope and a common story. 20 years ago, Park Dae-ho began. I was dying on a remote station. A Helix engineer named Vexstar found me and chose compassion over convenience. He shared his food, his medicine, his shelter. I saved my life when logic said he shouldn't. The children listened with rapt attention, just as millions of children across the galaxy had heard this story over the years. But Vexstar's kindness didn't stop with saving one human, Park Dae-ho continued. It grew, it spread. It became the foundation for friendships between species who had never trusted each other before. Today, that kindness has become strong enough to hold back the darkness. Above them, the battle entered its second phase. The Void Hunters deployed their world-killer ships, massive vessels designed to crack planets like eggs and drain their life energy. These were the weapons that had destroyed 17 systems in the past month. But Crystalla Prime was no longer just one world defended by its own people. The network had transformed it into the heart of an alliance that spanned the galaxy. When the World Killers attacked, they faced not just planetary defenses, but the combined power of every ship and platform in the alliance. The planet's crystal formations began to glow as energy flowed through the network. The alliance had learned to use Crystalla Prime's unique geology as a massive focusing lens, channeling the defensive power of hundreds of ships into concentrated beams that could punch through Void Hunter armor. World Killer Fleet disabled, announced the tactical officer with amazement. Crystalla Prime's defenses are operating at 400% of normal capacity. The Void Hunters responded by deploying their most terrible weapon, the command ship itself. The moon-sized vessel moved toward Crystalla Prime with deliberate menace. Its hull pulsed with the stolen life energy of 1,000 dead worlds. As it approached, Alliance sensors detected something horrifying. The ship was trying to drain energy directly through space, feeding on the life force of every organic being. In the system, all organic crew members report immediate fatigue, came reports from throughout the Alliance fleet. Life support systems compensating, but the effect is increasing as the command ship approaches. This was how the Void Hunters had destroyed countless civilizations. Didn't just attack with weapons. They fed on life itself, weakening their enemies while strengthening themselves. But the Alliance had something that Void Hunters had never encountered: beings willing to sacrifice themselves for others. I'm reading massive power surges from the human ships, reported Kim Soo-jin. They're overloading their reactors and feeding pure energy into the network. Throughout the human fleet, crews had made the same decision. Rather than let the Void Hunters drain their life force, they would give their energy freely to the Alliance. They fed their ship's power into the network, even knowing it would leave them defenseless. The gesture spread through the Alliance like wildfire. Crystalline ships began channeling their structural energy into the network. Aquatic vessels shared their bioelectrical fields. Insectoid craft synchronized their hive mind processing power. Each species found their own way to contribute to the whole, giving not because they were forced to, but because they chose to honor the example of selfless kindness that had brought them together. The network evolved beyond its original design. It became something unprecedented, a weapon powered not by technology, but by the willing sacrifice of beings who had learned that some things were worth more than individual survival. Vexstar felt the change as energy flowed through the command ship. The network wasn't just sharing power anymore. It was sharing purpose. Every being in the Alliance was connected through bonds of gratitude and friendship that had grown from his simple choice to save a dying stranger. Firing sequence initiated, announced Admiral Yang. All network nodes synchronized. This is for everyone who believed that kindness matters. The Alliance fired as one, not hundreds of separate weapons, but a single beam composed of the combined will of dozens of species. The energy that struck the Void Hunter command ship wasn't just destructive force. It was concentrated compassion, weaponized.